massive AC-130 gunship is packed with a variety of weapons like this Bofors 40mm cannon. Let's take a look at 3 others. This is the GAU-23A with a 200 rounds per minute rate of fire. Derived from the infamous Bushmaster, it's a special design fit particularly for the AC-130.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, I just figured while we're waiting on everybody to roll in here, you can get a look inside of a Spectre gunship, otherwise known as Puff the Magic Dragon and everything else. Check this sucker out, baby. We're going to get into the interview with Joe Kent today that he just had on Mark Levin, and we're also going to be going over a different war update. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned.
That's a lot faster. They call this the GAU-12 equalizer. A smaller caliber weapon, it will get you an astonishing 4,000 RPM rate of fire. Now this one is a bit of a surprise for some. That is an artillery, not usually what you'd see firing from the sky. It's an M102, a 1960s technology rarely used anymore from the ground, but from up here it's found some extra life.
Do we load it for you, dude?
This is the loadout of the AC-130J Ghost Rider in particular, with other variants fitting different weapons, with that first Bofors cannon being from a U variant specifically.
Yeah, what do you guys think about that bad boy, huh? That is freaking awesome. If you've ever had one of those in support, they are freaking great. I absolutely love those things to death. One of my favorite air platforms ever, favorite things to have running support up overhead. And I want to, also start this off by giving you guys a little bit of this day in history. December 5th, 2011, Iran ended up capturing a USA spy drone, believe it or not. What you guys are looking at up there on your screen is a US American, right, RQ-170 Sentinel. It's a stealth surveillance drone. It ended up getting taken by Iran flying underneath northern Iran. Now, interesting enough, U.S. ended up claiming they lost contact. It ended up crashing, something of that nature. But Iran had came out back then and said, no, we took control of your drone and actually landed it. That drone belongs to us now. And then these images started to come out. And what we saw in the images was very troubling. The images actually showed the drone was completely and totally intact. It is not indicative of the drone crashing down. It is not indicative of it smashing into the earth. It's a soft landing. It looks like it got brought down. Iran actually used this tech. I posted about this just a short time ago. Iran actually used this tech in some of the development of their Shahid drones and some of the upgrades. It's used in multiple different versions of them, and it's currently, doing damage over the Middle East. Absolutely helped to, improve the range and stuff like that on them. But just FYI, when people are out there trying to tell you that Iran is not a threat, that they are just a bunch of freaking Hajis and PWACs with pitchforks and everything, I want you guys to know they are backed by Iran. They are backed by China. They are backed by Russia. Right. And they get tons of technology from them and they like to share it. And this goes back into my saying that I've been trying to tell you guys for the longest time is this whole war between Iran and the United States of America, in my opinion, is more to do with Russia and China than it really is Iran. I have no doubt that they're an actual national security threat to the United States of America, as we just saw with their 4,000 kilometer range drone the other day that they fired on, what was it, Friday? Right. They put that sucker in Venezuela. It's smashing the East Coast. It's taken out every single southern state. Not to mention, they certainly have, the tech to take our stuff down and rip it off and do everything else with it. Anyways, not everybody feels that way at all. Matter of fact, Joe Kent is one of the people that doesn't feel that way. He used to be the director of the NCTC, National Counterterrorism Center, here in the United States of America. It's basically America's big intel hub. It kind of syncs everybody together and across the different intelligence platforms and provides a common operational picture of what's actually going on. Joe went on an interview with Mark Levin after he resigned last week. This ended up taking place last night. I listened to a couple minutes of it, and within the first couple statements, I was like, that's not accurate at all. So we're going to go over that. We're going to talk about it here, and I'm going to pause it. I'm going to provide commentary and more insight to some of the things he has. Now, a lot of this is going to be a blind react. I didn't have time to listen to all of it, but I had enough time to listen to a portion of it to go, that's wrong. Let's let it roll. This is about 15 minutes into it's 15 minutes into Mark's show. He rambled. Mark Levin rambled for like 15 minutes before Joe comes on. I'm actually hitting play at the 408 mark. And Cock Faraday coming in, giving out 5 Speak the Truth memberships. Thank you, sir. House of Karma in here, gifting out 20 as well. Holy freaking cow, man. How did I miss that? Tristan Allen says, Matt, I got a great idea to get the Dems all trapped up. You need to get Nate to run this by JD. Dems don't want voter ID, no ID checks for firearms. I mean, I'm a big fan of that. I brought that up before, but people are just stupid, man. They're just stupid. I don't know what to tell you. Tristan says IRGC deployed troops to northern Iran for Kurdish ground invasion. Good luck for him on that one. Koopmans, Valero ICS sabotage via drone virus installation. Yeah, let's talk about that for 1 second before I actually get into this other portion of the show, that drone and the Valero station explosion and what actually happened yesterday. After I ended up running that show last night, some of you guys actually came to me and were like, hey man, you might want to take a look at this. An account over on X known as Amuse ended up publishing this along with some other stuff. I took it, screenshotted it, straightened it out. So that's why it's got that weird line that's going across it. It's this account, Ali Hiba. He said, and it's from Saudi Arabia. It's a Saudi account. It says, within a week, the largest gas refinery in the United States, Motiva Enterprises, in the city of Port Arthur, Texas, on the U.S. Gulf Coast, will be destroyed. Save the tweet. That came out about an hour before the incident took place at the Valero plant. Now, he's not wrong in his statement that Motiva is the largest refinery in the United States of America. That would be correct. It's also owned by Saudi Arabia. In addition, though, we have Valero. What was so interesting about that particular Valero plant? That Valero plant had brand new cokers that were being put in that would have made it the largest refinery, taken over for Chevron, making it the largest refinery for Venezuelan oil in conjunction with the ports and everything else that they have over there. It took over as the largest refiner of Venezuelan oil, which is super interesting. Now, Amuse said that he ended up deleting all of these posts, immediately following the attack. But interesting enough, this is a screenshot for you guys off my desktop. This account, Ali Ba, also commented over on Jackson Hinkle, who is a known Russian chill, where he said massive fires. Jackson said massive fires burn after a loud explosion heard at the Valero oil refinery. And he said, Ali Hiba said, who tampered with the refinery is the Israeli Mossad. The title, David, place of residence, Jerusalem. So he was putting out several posts yesterday. These are his replies. He wiped his page, but he didn't wipe his replies. So he deleted all of his original posts, but he forgot to delete his replies, which happens sometimes. Here's another one, Shanaka Pereira. The guy, in my opinion, puts out really well-worded propaganda pieces. We have Alahiba. He says, what about the largest gas refinery in the United States, Texas? Mossad blew up the Daoud code belonging to Israeli Mossad, 38 years old, living in Jerusalem. Was the explosion carried out by a drone? So this was coming out last night, all right, when he was posting all this stuff. As it was breaking, he was still going through doing that until he got dimed out. And the other interesting part is I did, in fact, find language that matched some of the stuff that were in there. That was also in some of his replies. Now, I would assume that most of them are in his post. If we go and we look at this, the original one, it says within a week. If you go over to his account and you actually type in within a week and you search it, it'll pull up replies where he says within a week if he hasn't deleted them yet. So certainly the language matches the way he would talk and everything else. I think it's at least worth looking into. I'm not saying this is 100% that something's going to happen or that it is confirmed as if it's sabotage, because Amuse does put out plenty of freaking bad information, click engagement, things of that nature. But because of the common language on top of the fact that he wiped his account and the fact that he was commenting on this on several other accounts that are known freaking propaganda accounts, it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of took part in that whole thing. All right, let's go ahead and get over there. Thank you for bringing that up. That was a solid thing to actually bring up. So let's go ahead and bring this up and let's start playing some of the stuff that Joe Kent actually ended up saying.
He said he had access to same information that Joe Kent did, and Joe Kent is wrong. The threat was imminent. And there I've laid the foundation. Joe Kent, I'd like to go through some of this with you and give you an opportunity to respond. We got Semaphore, we got Axios, we got the New York Post, we got on and on and on, saying that you were considered a leaker. We have the White House saying it. Were you a leaker? Are you under investigation? Do you know whether you're under investigation? Let's try and clear the air right at the beginning.
Sure, Mark. Thanks for having me on. I never leak any classified information. And the stories you're reading are stories from leakers who are leaking, I guess, maybe an investigation about me being a leaker. So I think it's just a media counter narrative. I had
so nobody has contacted you from Justice or the FBI or anything like that?
Nope.
Did you?
Now, he might not be aware of the investigation, and they don't have to make him aware of the investigation. I just want you guys to know that, right? Like, they are allowed to run it like as is. They don't have to make him aware of the investigation. But I would take him at his word on that he didn't know it was happening.
Did you ever leak confidential? Let me do it this way. Did you ever leak classified information? You said no. Did you ever leak confidential information?
Nope.
Never.
Never.
Were you cut out? Okay, you're on the record. That's perfectly fine. And that's a good thing, Joe. Were you cut out of briefings for the last 3 months or so when you were there?
No, I wouldn't say I was cut out. I mean, the president can choose to have whoever he wants to have in the actual presidential Oval Intelligence sessions.
So, play on words. No, I wouldn't say I was cut out. President can choose who he wants to have in the overall intelligence sessions, I believe is the exact verbiage. Might have got it a little bit wrong. So he's claiming he wasn't cut out, but he's also not denying that he wasn't there. If you go back and we listen to it, which we're going to, it most certainly sounds like he was, but he's just using the excuse. President gets to choose who he has in these intelligence sessions. But remember that office of the NCTC, it oversees like a ton of that other, all of those different intel agencies, and its job is to give basically a common operational picture.
Did you ever leak confidential?
No.
Okay, you're on the record. That's perfectly fine. And
Listen.
That's a good thing, Joe. Were you cut out of briefings for the last 3 months or so when you were there?
No, I wouldn't say I was cut out. I mean, the president can choose to have whoever he wants to have in the actual presidential Oval Intelligence sessions. I still had access to the PDB and was part of,
Tell everybody what that is.
That were appropriate for my job. The president's daily brief.
So you had access to that right up to the end?
Yeah, until the day I walked out the door.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think the president said he never really remembers you that well? He never really met with you that often. Is that correct?
Well, the president meets with so many different people. I mean, he knew who I was, but by no means was I a primary advisor to him on a daily basis. However, in terms of determining the threat level that Iran posed to our country, I was a key part of that process. So that was very much in my purview.
That would be
And
accurate.
he rejected your view?
I don't think he rejected the view. I think he may have chosen to go a different direction, and I think the vast majority of intelligence and information that he received was given to him to paint a picture that Iran was on the cusp of developing a nuclear weapon, which just simply was not the truth. And
So we'll pause it there on that statement. Iran was on the cusp of developing a nuclear weapon, which he says simply was not true. Well, they certainly had the uranium in order to do it. As I've stated numerous times on this program, the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, last time they were over there, did find uranium enriched up to 87%, at least trace elements of it at 2 undisclosed locations. And that's only what the IAEA was able to find. So to sit back and pretend like they weren't trying to is a bit absurd. They certainly appeared as if they were trying to. Now, if he can come up with another explanation for why they would be trying to do that and enriching to that level, I'd be glad to hear it. But to my knowledge, other than weapons grade, there's no reason to enrich uranium to that level. And that's just a documented fact that was shown up at the UN. It's a record. Like you can't get rid of that. You can't pretend like it doesn't exist. You can't pretend like they didn't do that. That's just a fact. And by the way, the IAEA doesn't even determine whether or not they were in compliance with, like, they are literally international watchdog. Go in, they've got no dog in the fight whatsoever. Don Booth says, what's your thoughts that the space talks Trump touted that Iran denies may actually be a tactical pause to resupply? The peace talks, yes, sir. I do believe that is United States chance because it's 5 days. And that's about the same time when that ends that the Muse are scheduled to arrive. So it very well could be for that, in my opinion. I think we're going to end up going and taking some of these uranium enrichment sites on the ground.
Also, as Secretary Rubio said, there was no imminent threat coming from Iran against the Americans.
Well, you know, he corrected that.
There was an imminent threat coming from the Israelis who were going to attack. But that's actually the truth.
Okay, hold on. We're going to do it. We're going to do it honestly, one point at a time.
Had observed the Iranians had observed an escalation ladder. They hadn't attacked us under President Trump.
Can you do me a favor? And I don't mean to be rude. Can you?
Said they observed an escalation ladder. They didn't attack us underneath President Trump. That's not entirely true. If you guys remember when Trump first came into office, we started bombing the hell out of the Houthis over inside of the Red Sea for a very long time. As a matter of fact, during that time frame, the United States also was trying to talk to Iran to get them to force the Houthis to stop shooting at commercial vessels and our military vessels transiting in international waters over inside the Red Sea. We went so far as to even tell Iran that if they didn't control the Houthis, that they would be held accountable. That's what actually happened underneath the Trump administration. It's just a fact. So their proxy forces were in fact attacking U.S. ships at the time.
Talk a little more slowly. I'm having trouble hearing. Take your time. Go ahead.
Sure. When President Trump came into office, the Iranians knew that President Trump wanted to get a deal. They observed the escalatory ladder very carefully. They stopped having our proxies attack us like they were attacking us under the Biden administration.
I want to read you something, Joe, for you to respond to here.
And I'm also going to point this out. He also brought up the fact that they were attacking us underneath the Biden administration, which shows that they are a threat to the United States of America. And he doesn't deny that they weren't a threat to the United States of America. I believe his stance is denying the imminent threat. Patrick Loudon says they claimed the attempt to hit on Trump. That's an attack, Myers. Yes, absolutely. You go after, you try to assassinate a president of a foreign nation. That's an act of war. Thiz Marley. There's only one rogue nuclear nation in the Middle East. Oh, I know where you're going with that.
When one of President Trump's closest advisors, who's vocally advocating for us to not go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis, and then he's suddenly publicly assassinated and we're not allowed to ask any questions about it. It's a data point, you told Carlson, about the murder of our friend Charlie Kirk. It's a data point that we need to look into. What are you trying to look into there? What do you think happened there?
What I know is that there were foreign leads that we didn't get a chance to look into, that we did not thoroughly investigate. That's what I know.
You have any country in mind?
No, I think we need to fully investigate the potential of any foreign nexus.
So you
Okay, now here's the catch. Dan Bongino came out a couple days ago and went off. For those of you guys that don't know, he was the deputy director of the FBI. He said they chased down all of those leads. He said that they went to town on all of those leads and that they looked into all of them. And that Joe Kent just wasn't happy with the results because they led to nowhere. They were essentially like freaking white rabbits that they were chasing into nothing. And that they made it to the bottom and they couldn't find crap. So all of the online threats, all of the foreign nexus, all of that stuff, Bongino came out, said that they looked into it. And it's important to understand the difference between the two. Joe Kent, Fusion Center for Intel. Bongino runs the FBI, responsible for counterterrorism here in the United States of America, along with national security and things of that nature. All right, that's what the Bureau's responsibility is here at home. So one is an intelligence organization, no action arm. The other one is the Bureau that is supposed to be investigating these things. And again, the guy that investigated it is in complete disagreement and even called him out and said, where is your evidence? Do you have evidence? Show it. But you don't. You just speak out there.
I think a foreign country may have been involved in his assassination. Does the FBI think that?
What I think is that we need to thoroughly investigate all the potentials. That's what needs to happen.
I know, but what I'm trying to find out, you're a smart guy. You're an accomplished guy. Is there something that piqued your interest that caused you to say, maybe there's something foreign and we need to look into this? I mean...
There is. I just can't get into it because it's classified and it's part of an ongoing investigation, I hope. But from my vantage point and from what I saw at the National Counterterrorism Center, that was not thoroughly looked into.
I'm not trying to be rude. Just slow down. I'm a little hard of hearing. Go ahead. What was that? I didn't hear you.
What I said was there were still potential foreign links and leads that we needed to look into. That's what I know. That's what I'm asserting.
So you're not asserting any particular country there?
No, I'm not.
How about Butler?
Now, this is something that I do find a little bit troubling. A lot of people are taking it that he's pointing at Israel and stating that Israel's like the one that is behind the assassination. Got it. Understand your sentiment on that. My sentiment on that is I know for a fact that countries like Russia have been employing active shooters in the United States of America. Last year, we had a guy get prosecuted up over inside of New York. He wasn't Russian. I'm trying to remember what freaking country he came from. But we do know for a fact that Russia is doing those things here in the United States of America, and they're doing them through different freaking groups, and they're all doing it through online. And so if that's something that Joe is actually referencing here, which I hope to God he is, then I would be absolutely pissed if they didn't do it.
Do you think any foreign government was involved in the attempt to assassinate the president there?
We need to thoroughly investigate that, especially now that Thomas's Crook's online persona has been uncovered. That needs to be looked into as well.
Mm-hmm. You think it's Iran, maybe?
We should investigate to see if there's any linkage between Iran, but in particular in between the Iranian agent Asif Merchant, who was just convicted for plotting an assassination attempt against President Trump. That should be looked into to see if those two events are linked. That should definitely be looked into. And I think you'd agree on that, wouldn't you?
100%. And because we know Iran did try to assassinate the president, and one guy was just convicted of it, and the other guy's in Iran. So he was. But I was just wondering this statement here, because a lot of Jewish groups and others said you were really focusing on Israel, and you're telling me no, not at all. It could be any foreign country, correct?
In my statement, my letter of resignation, I say that the Israelis forced President Trump into this war.
No, I'm talking about this that you said on Carlson's show, when a president close to his advisors who's vocally advocating for us not to go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis, and then he's suddenly publicly assassinated. We're not allowed to ask questions about that. It's a data point. What's the data point?
The data point is that the investigation, in my view, especially the foreign ties, has not been complete. And that.
Well, why did you bring up the Israelis there? Are you talking about what are you talking about there? Botswana? I mean, what are you thinking about when you say that? I'm just curious.
It's a valid question.
No, I'm questions. That Charlie was advocating for us not to go to war with Iran and to rethink our relationship with the Israelis, and then he is killed.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and this is a statement that everybody needs to remember. Correlation does not equal causation. Correlation does not equal causation. There was a lot of people in the United States that were against the United States going to war with Iran. A lot of them. And a lot of those people were likely murdered as well here in the United States. I guarantee you I could find murder cases of people that were anti-war. Just because they were murdered for being anti-freaking, whatever it is, and their views and beliefs doesn't mean that Israel did it. That is a very gigantic leap to take without any evidence whatsoever.
This needs to be looked into. That's all I can say.
That's all you can say. Rich, can you play what Charlie said after the president ordered the dropping of the bombs in June on those sites in Iran? Go ahead.
And you might say, Charlie, do you support or oppose this? I support President Trump. That's my answer. I know the man. He's the commander-in-chief. He's the man for the hour, and he's had the weight of the world on his shoulders. So in a situation like this, I support my friend, and he's had my back and I have his. That's my perspective. By the way, I also look at this and I say, and I understand the arguments of people that, don't intervene and all that. I get it. But boy, have we not exhausted so many diplomatic channels and options.
What do you think of that?
I didn't resign after Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was a targeted operation that did not result in a further continuation of the war.
I'm not talking about why you resigned. I'm talking about, hold on. I'm talking about that
Every blurry and low vision
That
sufferer
is,
must try this daily ritual that is leaving doctors
for the love of
speechless.
God with the
If
ads.
you wear
That was Charlie's.
That is a very valid thing. Like, him stating that is extremely valid. Stating that, you know, like, I support the president. I agree with this operation. I support this war, basically, is what he was saying. And that is extremely important because Joe knows the question that was just asked of him prior to. He knows the context of the conversation, which Joe had brought up. And he stated Charlie didn't support these types of things. He didn't support the U.S. going to war with Iran. Levin ends up bringing up Midnight Hammer, where we bombed the crap out of them. Charlie supported it. It goes directly against his narrative. Instead of addressing it, he kind of skirts the question, and then Mark throws him back on track. It's very important.
Comment about the president ordering the bombing of those nuclear sites in Iran, right?
Right.
And you were talking about
I heard that like
you
I
were
heard that,
talking
like,
about
real-
Charlie being assassinated, right?
Right, he was against the regime change war that's taking place right now.
Okay, hold on. I'm not talking about
Midnight
that.
Hammer and the bombing was two completely different things. Targeted operations are completely
You were
different.
talking about the
As
assassination.
we've seen with the ramifications.
One of President's closest advisors, who's vocally advocating for us not to go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis, and then he's suddenly publicly assassinated. President Trump wasn't talking about hitting Iran again in September. We're talking about June.
We knew that after Midnight Hammer, it was evident that the Israelis still wanted regime change in Iran, and they were going to continue to push.
How did the Israelis get all this power over President Trump? He says to you, that's not right. Radcliffe says, that's not right. Hegseth says, that's not right.
So
I don't know what the vice president said to you, but why do you keep insisting?
So, and Mark does have a very valid point here. We bombed him in June and pulled out. Now, I had said that if Iran didn't come to the table by the end of September, I remember this, and I'm an honest human being, that I expected us to have a massive bombing campaign against Iran. But at the time, what our government was stating, to keep it in context, what our government was stating was that we had completely destroyed their enrichment program and set them back like a decade. That was the context of the time when this happened. There was no further talks of going to war with Iran. It just didn't exist. It wasn't there. And the campaign that we did, Charlie supported it. Andreas Northam brings up a very valid point. I was actually saving a super chat for this one. He said, even if Charlie was against the war with Iran, it makes no sense that Israel would kill one of their biggest advocators, which is correct. Even if Charlie didn't want to go to war with Iran, didn't want a regime change, and Israel schwacked him, it would do them more harm than good. It's just a fact.
On it when they keep insisting it's not true.
Because in real time over the course of the last year, we watched the Israelis through their official engagements with members of our government and the media echo chamber, which I believe you were a part of, move President Trump's red line from saying that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon to saying Iran can't have any enrichment, because President Trump and the former supreme leader of Iran agreed that Iran...
Last I checked, that's a false statement. We've been sticking with zero uranium enrichment this entire time. That narrative of no uranium enrichment hasn't changed. I will tell you what has changed and what has been added on, which is the ballistic missile range and the funding of proxy organizations. Those are the two additional demands that have been thrown on. But as far as enrichment goes, we've told them, we don't want you enriching. You can buy it like everybody else. And in fact, they were buying it at the time. The United States government backed out of the JCPOA. Trump backed out of the JCPOA. There were still multiple other countries, I think 5 other countries that were involved. UK, Germany, China, Russia, like whatever. Multiple of them. And Iran didn't even back out of the JCPOA until 25. They were supposed to be holding to that, in addition to the NPT. And they were in violation of both when they backed out in 25. It's just a fact. And so that is why our government has stuck to the enrichment aspect.
And was not going to get a nuclear weapon. They were getting
and you believed them.
Table.
You believe
so I believe the 18 members of the intelligence community.
Apparently it wasn't 18 because the CIA director said you're wrong.
What the assessment, the coordinated assessment that the CIA sent to the ODNI said that they were not working towards getting a nuclear bomb because the supreme leader had a prohibition on the development of nuclear weapons.
So you believed his fatwa. I mean, this is kind of foolish.
That within itself is ridiculous. Like, I would love to see that intel assessment that actually states that because a fatwa was put out, that somehow they're following it. As if the intel community is not familiar with taqiyya. As if the intel community didn't see the amount of uranium that they were enriching, didn't read all of the different reports, didn't see all of it. I would be very interested to see that. Because if there is an intel assessment that says because of the fatwa that was issued, not a snowball's chance in hell Iran's going to build a nuclear weapon, that's a pretty ballsy take. And I feel like all those people should be fired. And I hope you would agree with that. Iran also claimed a ton of things. They claim a ton of things on a daily basis. Hell, they claim they shot down an F-35 last June, numerous fighters so far this war, and none of it's accurate. They claim they took out one of our freaking aircraft carriers. Not true. They deny a lot. And to sit here and pretend like they wouldn't deny that they're going after a nuclear weapon when all of the evidence suggests otherwise, I think is asinine. And all of those members of the intel community, if that is the case, should have their asses fired. Honestly.
So they put out a fatwa. The guy just lied about the distance. Hold on. The guy lied about the distance of their ballistic missiles in February. His foreign minister did.
Then why didn't Iran have a nuclear weapon? They've been trying. If they've been trying.
Then why didn't Iran have what?
2004. Why didn't they have a nuclear weapon? If Iran wanted,
why do you think they didn't have a nuclear weapon? Because we and the Israelis and perhaps other countries stopped them with cyber warfare and other things. I'm not even understanding your argument. Let's try it this way. Let's go back to basics.
No, we had no intelligence that said that Iran was working to develop a nuclear weapon. That information came from the Israelis, and then the fact
it came from Witkoff.
So one, over on Sean Ryan's podcast, Sarah Adams actually talked about this. Just like the U.S. has greater intelligence inside of Afghanistan because of the amount of time that we've spent on the ground and the location of our threats that we're facing as a nation, we had our intel assets oriented that way. Likewise, over inside of Iran, Mossad's got more of its intel assets that are oriented over there. So the intel can come, in fact, from the Israelis. But you just don't take one piece of intelligence and say, yes, this is the truth. It is multi-sourced and cross-referenced to make sure it's actually accurate. Gordon Beaton. Funny how Joe Kent forgets that the Houthis shot down an MQ-9 Reaper drone over the Red Sea 11 months ago. Seems like a proxy threat to me. Yeah, you are correct.
Directly said we were negotiating with the Iranians. That they told us. Right. Hold on. I need the public to understand this.
There's no.
All right, you go first, then I'll go.
President Trump said no nuclear weapons, and then through official engagements through the Israelis, and then also the media echo chamber that wanted regime change in Iran said no, we need to say that the Iranians can't.
What about the media echo chamber?
Trump, in public statements, said no nukes. Trump also says lots of dumb things. And so to me, what it is we have a twisting of words here. Because the stance has always been enrichment. We didn't just go after their storage facilities. We went after centrifuges. We went after the places where they're enriching. And we did that because we didn't want them enriching. It has always been the case. Not no nukes, no enrichment.
Chamber, your buddies who didn't want regime change in Iran. There's a lot of echo chambers out there, wouldn't you say?
It appears that your media echo chamber was much more successful.
No, it
because now we're in this
wasn't. I
catastrophic
never
war.
lobbied the president.
president's
Hey,
trying to
hey,
get
pay
us-
attention to me. I never
I am. Hear
lobbied
you.
the president. You guys keep putting that crap out there. I met with the president once at his request, and I said to the president, ready for this, Joe? I said, they're saying out there that I'm lobbying you. You know what he did? He laughed. You know what he said? Mark, I know where you stand. I watch your show on Saturday and Sunday. Anything I say here,
you can
pay
lobby
attention.
him.
Anything I say here
him on your
is what I
show.
would say. I did what?
You can lobby him by using the power of your show, the power of your
Come on,
platform.
brother.
That's
You're
what I
not.
mean.
You're sounding almost ridiculous now. Now let's go on. I have a question. There's been a big controversy now. Andrew COVID now. Media has covered it. Other people have covered it. He put out a video. He gave you text messages confidentially. Hold on,
I
man.
didn't
Let me
give the
just
text
get the
message-
question
I
out. You
didn't-
can
I didn't
dispute
give
it,
text messages to anybody.
but I
You
have
don't
to
wanna talk-
explain
you
it
don't
to
wanna
the
talk about
public.
red line
If you
moving and how we
wait.
got into the war.
Hold on. So they got. What is it? Why don't you want to answer this? You won't even let me set up the question. He said that he
I just
gave you
answered it.
text messages from Charlie Kirk, all this discussion about the Israelis and donors and so forth, that you called him and you said, make it public. He said, no, I'm not comfortable doing that. And then the next thing he knows, Candace Owens has it, and she makes it public, and she's off to the races, just like you and Tucker and the rest. Did that happen or not? Did you give it to
Andrew-
Candace Owens, yes or no?
I did not give anything to Candace Owens, no.
Well, this is good to know. So you've never leaked. You didn't give anything to Candace
I did not give anything to Candace Owens. Good.
Owens. I have a much higher regard for you now. That's the truth. I don't
Good.
care for what you've done. When you put that letter out, you knew it would do maximum damage to the president, didn't you? The timing, for instance, if you were going to resign because you didn't agree with this war, why didn't you resign when the war started?
Because I was hoping that we would immediately de-escalate and try and get back to the negotiating table.
We would
I
start a
didn't see
war and
that happening,
de-escalate in
and I
3
thought-
days?
I was hoping that we were
Where's
going
that
to do
ever
limited
happen?
strikes, and then limited strikes like we did in Midnight Hammer, and then back off and go back to the negotiating table. Once I realized that that was not going to happen, and we were spiraling deeper into this, and we were starting to lose brave men and women in yet another Middle Eastern war driven by the Israeli agenda, that's what led me.
Well,
to
man, you
resign,
got
and I
a real
felt
hate on
duty to make
you.
it public.
You got a real hate on, brother. No, you
Mark,
do.
I have-
Hold
I
on,
have
hold on,
no
Joe.
hate- I have
When I had
no
you on
hate
my
whatsoever.
show, I read your texts. I read them out loud.
So the question is, and I want you guys to take this and bring it down within your soul. Where is his blame on Iran? Where is his blame on Iran's responsibility in any of that? In the fact that they were highly enriching uranium, beyond 60% documented. That they were funding multiple terror organizations around the world that have made it on our doorstep, by the way. Or did we forget about the Hezbollah terrorists last week that shot up a place here in America? Did we forget about that? What about the fact they're operating in Mexico and Venezuela? For him not to acknowledge that and go straight to Israel agenda, Israel war, getting us involved in the Middle East, again, completely rips the onus off of the IRGC for every bad thing that they have done in our hemisphere and in the past.
And you've done a 180. Why is that? Because you had access to intelligence or something? Why have you changed completely?
I have not done a 180. I have no problem with us working with Israel. I have a problem with Israel driving our foreign policy in the Middle East as they have done to get us.
Do you
into
have
this
no
war.
respect for
And yes,
Donald Trump's agency, that he has
Yes,
the
I have.
capacity to make these decisions himself?
I have the utmost respect for the president. You can read
You
my
didn't
letter
answer
and
my
you can
question.
see
You
that.
don't sound like it.
I believe that he was influenced by the media echo chamber and by the Israelis.
Well, maybe he's influenced by your media echo chamber. Or maybe he's influenced by the Saudis and the Qatar. Who knows? He made a decision. Can't you accept the fact that he's a great president, that he took in all this information, he listened to all his advisors, and he made a decision? You may disagree with it, but why do you create a conspiratorial notion that Israel, 9.5 million people, a tiny economy and everything, dragged powerful Donald Trump and the United States into war? Not one. You even have them dragging us into the Iraq war when on the record they said they didn't want to do the Iraq war. They opposed us doing it. Where'd you come up with that one?
In this administration, I watched the Israeli media.
You were there 7 months.
Of the Israeli government. I watched that. I came in day one, and I worked as the DNI's chief of staff until I was confirmed. So
By the way, does Tulsi Gabbard agree with you?
You have to ask her. But what I did see is I saw the Israeli media echo chamber, and I'm not going to speak for Tulsi Gabbard. What I'm telling you is the red line.
You're speaking for the president. You said he was convinced by Israel.
No, I'm speaking for Joe Kent. That's why I resigned, so I could speak freely. I watched the.
By the way, that's very interesting.
No nukes to enrichment.
Go ahead.
What we watched, the red line moved from no nukes to no enrichment. That basically short-circuited the ability for there to be a deal, leading us basically to a military conflict that was driven by Israel.
What does that mean? Slow down, Joe. What does that mean? No nukes to nuclear enrichment. What does that mean?
That's a great question. So President Trump has always said, and I think most people agree, that Iran can't get a nuclear bomb. Now, the former Supreme Leader agreed, and he had that fatwa in place. So that gave the Iranians
the fatwa meant crap.
To get to the negotiating
That's
table.
Where you and I disagree. Guy has a.
The fatwa's in place, and yet they still highly enriched uranium. And here's the other thing about Iran's peaceful nuclear energy program. They have one. I'll say it again. They have one, just one nuclear power plant. One that's operational. And they purchased their uranium for that plant from Russia. If their goal was to get off Russia's teat, they wouldn't be enriching their stockpiles as high as they have. They would stop wasting it. That power plant runs on 3.5%. That's it. For them to enrich to 60, for them to enrich to 87 is well outside of that threshold and doesn't have any medical need whatsoever. They'll stop around 20. And this is a fact that he continuously overlooks, despite the fact that a fatwa was given. So if the fatwa was given, why are they enriching to that level? What are they doing with it? Because when they sat down with Steve Witkoff during these negotiations, they told him that they were aware they had enough uranium to build 12 to 15 nukes. And they also had an additional 20 kilograms that wasn't previously noted, according to by their own words. Nova Australia, he keeps calling them nuclear weapons and not nuclear, and it's driving me insane. Nuclear, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't help him. MTX says Leaky Joe Kent seems to have became, or always was, a conspiratard and was focused on everything except his actual job. Never go full conspiratard. It's like you were there in having the conversation with me and my kids this weekend. In Cock Faraday, Iran has been lying for 47 years. It was past time to make them reconsider their ways. Stay the course. The world will be better off. Yeah, and nobody's going to argue that the world wouldn't be better off if the regime wasn't gone. What people are arguing is whether or not we should have some sort of regime change, if the regime change that's taking place right now is a thing. And I feel like he forgets, like, Israel is allowed to have their own agenda in this whole thing. It doesn't matter, though. The United States, we're going to meet a particular goal, and I think that goal is what Trump is playing with. And I'll go on this all day long. I will die on this hill. I am positive Trump is allowing the Israeli government to conduct a regime change inside of Iran. I just don't happen to give a crap. Because in my personal opinion, it needs to happen. Too many Americans have died over the years. Iran's proxy organizations are terrorizing the Middle East. They disrupt international shipping lanes. Now, within the last year, we've seen not just in the Red Sea, but also the Strait of Hormuz. These are very big problems. Very big problems. Not to mention, they had a 4,000 kilometer range ballistic missile that they certainly had the ability to place inside of Venezuela if they hadn't already before we ripped out Maduro. And that could have decimated the United States of America, especially with a nuclear warhead. So now the question becomes, is America better off without that regime in power? And the answer is yes. He probably agrees. He just doesn't agree with the means and methods that are being done in order to do it. I will never forget this statement that I got told by old frickin' Mac V Sa guy from Vietnam, which was, what do you do with somebody that wants to kill you and they're willing to give their life in order to do it? How do you stop that person? And the only logical answer is to kill them. There's no other way around it. That's your logical answer. And that has been Iran's goal, publicly stated, time and time and time and time again. So if you don't agree that it's an imminent threat right now, what threshold would you have liked? Because intelligence isn't perfect. Intelligence is never perfect. They get a lot of stuff wrong. And when you're responsible for the United States of America and the well-being of its citizens at home and abroad, at what point does it meet the threshold where you're okay dropping bombs? Where you're okay sending people to go to war? Because if it doesn't meet your threshold yet and you hold off and you're wrong because the intelligence is wrong and people frickin' die, it's your fault. It's not debatable whether or not Iran is a threat to the United States of America. It's not debatable whether or not they had ballistic missiles and frickin' people that they could have put those in, which would have endangered the United States of America. It's not in question whether or not they were enriching uranium to extremely high levels, the only reason for which is for a nuclear weapon, and that they are friends with Russia and China. And it's proven time and time again that our intelligence inside of Iran sucks.
Fatwa in place. Slaughters 50,000 of his own people. It's not. Hey, well, Joe, he's a terrorist.
Mark, I believe the 18 intelligence agencies.
Drinking warm water with cinnamon before bed eliminates this parasite.
Sorry about the ads. We just got to deal with the men. I didn't.
That said that Iran was not developing.
But guess what? The president agrees with his own conclusions. That is, that you're wrong.
Okay, well, let's go back to
Mr. Radcliffe believes you are wrong. The Secretary of Defense believes you're wrong. The Secretary of State believes you're wrong. And I can go right down the list.
Well, actually,
by the way, name the 18 intelligence agencies that agree with you, Joe. I don't even know what they are.
We don't have that much time, Mark. It's the intelligence community of the United States. Most people can look those up.
Joe Kent, President said he decided to take these steps because the Iranians weren't negotiating in good faith. His envoys come back to him and say, they just told us they have all this nuclear material and that they're not going to give it up and they're not going to give it to a third party and a number of other things. And you say it was Israel. Explain.
The Israelis launched the attack, and we knew that the Iranians would counterattack. That is the only imminent attack was actually the Israelis launching the attack. So that's what got us into this.
That's been denied, Joe.
We were in.
Hold on, Joe. The president of the United States said
that's okay.
He dragged the Israelis in.
Right. Initially, the Secretary of State, the Speaker of the House, Secretary of Defense, they all said that we had to attack because the Israelis were going to attack.
So they're all lying.
From my vantage point, that's what I saw as well.
They're all lying now, Joe?
What I saw was the Israelis driving us because they wanted the regime change war. They wanted to force our hand to make the Iranians to attack Iran, to make the Iranians counterattack us.
So the question that I have. This is the question that I have. As a director of the NCTC, with access to all of that intelligence, and if Israel was to attack Iran, would Iran attack the United States mainland? That's a serious question. That intelligence would have flowed through him. Why bring up the Speaker of the House and everybody else that sat down in that, well, it wasn't everybody else. There's a couple guys from that meeting. And then there was several other people that came out and said, I was in that meeting. That's not what that meant. That's not what they said. So my question would be, why wouldn't he bring up and say that, hey, look, man, I was a director of the NCTC. If Israel would have attacked Iran, yes, we could have expected attacks here on the United States soil, but he didn't. He deferred to other public statements from other people, not intelligence, not anything that he knew, didn't even speak in generality about a talking point on it, simply pointed to the same crap that we see being spun out in the media.
So that we would be in the conflict.
I think you're extremely conspiratorial. I think that you're ignoring what all the other senior officials and the president have said. I really do. And I hope when you tell me you haven't leaked, because all these people in the White House say you have, that you're telling me the truth. I have no reason to disbelieve you. I hope when you tell me that you didn't leak those texts to Candace Owens, I hope you're telling me the truth. I hope when you're telling me 18 intelligence agencies all came together and said that the Iranians are not close to getting nukes, I hope you're telling me the truth. And also,
public testimony in Congress.
Yeah, well, we have public testimony in Congress from one of them, the CIA director, that says you're full of baloney.
And I, who's responsible for representing the 18 intelligence community, 18
but he's the CIA. He's the big dog.
We're not.
And I asked you what Gabbard, but I asked you Gabbard's attitude, and you said I have to interview her.
Mark's absolutely correct here. I'll point this out because Joe specifically said all of them. All of them. All of them. Every intelligence agency didn't think so. And Mark brought up just the other day, the CIA director stating, yeah, they were. And it's a problem. So that would mean that at least one person outside of him, his claim is everybody was in disagreement with Iran moving towards it. Now, the ODNI, she can have that. But let's not forget what Tulsi Gabbard did last year. Do you guys remember before Midnight Hammer and she released that propaganda video of all the nuclear crap on social media? I thought she was about to get her ass canned. Because in my opinion, she did the exact same crap that frickin' Senator moron did when he was telling people to disobey, unlawful orders. It's the same type of subliminal BS. Like, we know what you're talking about, man. Tulsi did that. I thought she was going to get canned. So you can point to the ODNI and you can say, hey, she doesn't agree with that. Great. I also know that she's got a personal bias against that type of crap because she was probably listening to Tucker Carlson, by the way, who, if you remember right, was saying if we end up attacking Iran, it's going to be World War III. Nuclear freaking bombs everywhere. Everybody's going to freaking die. None of it happened. Am I the only one that remembers that? But we at least have one person from the intelligence community, director of the CIA, that says otherwise. And I'll remind you something else. The CIA is focusing on intelligence abroad, not necessarily here at home, abroad. That holds a hell of a lot more weight.
Agency contributed to the assessment.
Okay.
You asked me about her.
Who makes the final decision, Joe? Takes in all the information that the agencies put together. Who does that? You or the president?
The president does, but in this case, the Israelis decided to.
Did the intelligence agencies miss 9/11, or was that the Israelis too? Did the intelligence agencies miss Pearl Harbor, or was that the Israelis too? I'm really worried about you, brother. I really am. When you were first on my show, you seemed pretty straightforward and sane about this stuff.
I am pretty straightforward, and I don't think a foreign government should be allowed to dictate when we go to war. Or
I don't think they did. I think the president
right now,
makes
the Israelis have
Joe,
different
you're going to keep mentioning Israelis. It's getting very boring and silly. The president made the decision. The president said he made the decision. The top brass. Do you think General Kane is a good general?
Yeah, he is a good general.
Do you think he's doing this because the Israelis want him to do it? How about CENTCOM General Cooper? Is he doing it? Is he in service? Is he in service to the Israelis still?
Neither of them are responsible for taking us off the war. The important thing is what took us off the war.
You're right. The president of the United States of America, the commander in chief, the final decision maker, is the one that's responsible. And I'm not saying Joe Kent lied about the CIA director, that all of the intel agencies agreed, which would have included the agency itself, which clearly the director of the CIA didn't. Maybe he changed his mind in between whatever he's referring to and when he went to go testify. But I doubt it. Just like I doubt that all 18 of them, or the 17 remaining, let's be honest about this. And if Trump is using intelligence verifiable by our government, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Accurate, actionable intelligence is accurate, actionable intelligence. The president of the United States made the decision. Not Israel, not frickin' anybody else. That is abundantly clear. What he's trying to do is push and say that Israel is the one that forced him into it. Or the other argument that I've heard was, well, what if Israel provided false intelligence? Again, accurate, verifiable, actionable intelligence comes from multiple sources. You just don't send a freaking country off to war because you got like an obscure document that nobody knows where it came from. And you go, Israel said it must be true. Not how it works.
But they didn't resign in a public letter like you did either. Hey, Joe, I want to thank you for coming on. I really do. Wish you the best of luck.
That's delusion, in my opinion. That's absolute delusion. I can't tell you that I would agree with that at all. Fox McCloud says, what's his proof that Israel was influenced Trump other than his words? That is it. And then, I mean, I would assume that you could find other people in the intel community that would say that Israel provided intelligence to Trump. Or to our intel community that then brought it to Trump. I could see that. I also don't think it's a horrible thing. We are supposed to be sharing intelligence with our allies, particularly ones that we know in scenarios where we might actually get hurt or that lives are at stake. We're actually like required to share that type of stuff with certain countries. So it's nuts to me that he would think otherwise. But yeah, a lot of either A, false, or B, misleading statements ended up coming out during that. And that was one of the ones where he wasn't even allowed to ramble, or it was just out there. Don't agree with him by any means. Not even remotely close. It's not even remotely close. And I have pushed way, way beyond the limit that I thought I would get to with that. I was like, it's only 15 minutes worth of talking. There's no way I'm going to go like, dang, dude, how the hell did I run it for that long? No clue. MTX says Kent was a Steve Bannon guy. We saw how Bannon tried to sabotage Trump 1.0 in the files. Kent torched his rep to become a podcast prostitute. Yeah. Fox McCloud says, let's say you had a foreign government controlling your government. Wouldn't you want to collect all of the evidence and bring it to the public? Yeah, I absolutely would. That is one thing I would do. Like if I was actually worried about that taking place in my country, I would absolutely document and bring everything forth as best as possible. MTX says proof the Iranians said it themselves. Yeah, I know. But hey, they put out a fatwa, man. They put a fatwa out, so you gotta believe them. Gordon, Iran showed their cards when they were under fire and already had targeted neighboring their countries and allies. Joe Kent is not this stupid. Yeah, he just might be. He just might be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it for me. I appreciate you guys for joining me for another episode. It's gonna get real sometime soon. I know that much. I do know. Peace, love, happiness. God bless. I'm outie.